Okay, so by a show of hands, whether you put it in the comments, the emoji, or just say me, however you want to say it, who's ready to be educated about the education system? Because that's what we're talking about today. We are pulling back the curtain on the education system. So let's jump into this. Now, for those of you that probably said no, I'm not ready, don't ruin this for me, whatever your stance is, just hang in there, because I think you will hopefully appreciate this, at least by the end. And I encourage you to watch all the way through to the end, because you really might learn something. So I don't know if you've heard of Peter Boghossian. He was a teacher at Portland State University in Oregon, but he left because of how woke the universities kind of got. And he sat down with the CEO of PragerU, Marissa Streit, and they had this conversation about the education system. Now, I have 3 clips from this interview. I will link the actual full interview video down in the description so that you guys could go watch it at your leisure, because I highly encourage you to watch the entire thing. They really talk about a lot of stuff in there, and I just don't want to include so many clips of that. So I just have 3 from this interview. And then I got some other clips outside of that. But the first one I want to bring to you is they were talking about this whole, the statistics about if universities kind of accepted students based upon, how well they tested and merit, essentially. And he breaks this down, Peter breaks this down, what the percentages would look like. So let's look at this together and kind of hear what he has to say, and then we'll come back and peel this back a little bit. So let's check this out.
And now we have literally generations of people who have gone to college who have been indoctrinated by ideologues. It is, people simply do not understand the severity and nature of the problem. It is intractable, and I don't think it can be uprooted. I don't think there's any way to extirpate it at this point, given that people have jobs for life. And that's the raison d'etre of the institution. The raison d'etre of the institution is, it's not even, as Heather McDonald says, it's not even proportional representation. It's just finding someone who has an oppression variable in their background and using an equity-based system to guarantee that those people have positions of power.
So just to clarify, you're saying that many of these elite Ivy League schools, and including the school that you taught at, the reason they exist is to create division amongst Americans and to have them enlist in this game of victim bingo?
It's a little more complicated than that. This is how you think about it. So if you just look, if Harvard only, and Harvard has been in the news lately for good reason, we should probably talk about that
Well,
too.
I'm getting there.
Okay, good. Yeah. So if Harvard only took the top 10% of applicants, Asian Americans would be over 51%, cold climate Asians. Whites would drop, I think, in the 30s, a few points. Hispanics would plummet. African Americans would go from 13% to 0.9%. So what is the goal of the institution? Is the goal of the institution to find truth? Is the goal of the institution to find people whose ancestors have been historically oppressed and to forward those people, to give them opportunities or positions of authority or what have you, like President Gay of Harvard University? So the university's purpose has itself shifted from its traditional purpose of scholarship, academic excellence, et cetera, to a kind of race-based, gender-based, thinking about looking at reality, teaching people how to look at reality through a lens in which there's a constant oppression, and they must, kind of rise up against that oppression and whatever discharge.
Now, I encourage you to look that up for yourself and really do your own research. But if we really think about that, if universities really just took the top 10%, the top 10% of applicants, cold climate Asians, over 51%, and then he mentions how the whites, what percentage they would drop to, and the Hispanics and all of that, like what they would actually drop to. Now, is that actually being done though? Like, is it proportionately being done? Or are we admitting students to these universities that quite honestly have no business being there if they're not able to compete at that level? But we're admitting them based on race and gender instead of merit. So I will cover in a future video about this whole DEI stuff. I'm going to tackle that. So I'm gonna hold off on really diving into that whole merit stuff and really peeling that back until that video. So stay tuned for that. But on this topic here, what's happening is we are not allowing, and by we I mean universities, are not allowing and fostering an environment where students with differing opinions are allowed to speak their minds and bring that to the table. So it's kind of being silenced. They're being silenced and censored if you're not going along with their agenda, because they're pushing an agenda. And they shouldn't be. Universities should be teaching everything, teaching you how to critically think, teaching you how to have differing ideas, because that allows for people to be individuals. And Peter and Marissa touch on this too, about being able to foster an environment to allow people to critically think. So let's look at this clip too and see what they have to say, and then we'll peel this back a little bit.
That we need to ask questions about that. Look, if we have an environment in which we're not allowed to ask questions, invariably we're either going to have demagogues who come in with answers, or we won't have a moral infrastructure. We won't have a way to think about problems so that we can deal with them. And I don't even, it could be something as simple as like, should AI, and this is way out of my area, but should AI, if it develops sentience, should it be given rights, something like that, or animal rights, or vegan, or whatever. So we have to be able to ask questions. We have to be able to wrestle with opinions. And for a teacher to go in thinking or knowing that they have a right answer to the moral question, and they're going to test students on it, and they're only going to give literature that agrees with what people already believe, you're doing the students a profound disservice. You are not educating them. It is a backward roadmap away from reality, and is a recipe for discord.
And people are penalized for thinking freely. I mean, that is what's so terrifying about all of this. It's not just professors and teachers that Title IX is weaponized against. It's also students, right? Like if a student basically says something that might hurt somebody who doesn't win victim bingo at that moment, right? They're not one of the more oppressed group. They can be accused of something and they're not even given an opportunity to defend themselves. That's what's so crazy about Title IX.
Right. And remember, there are these truths. Diversity is a big truth. Equity is a big truth. Inclusion is a big truth. And these are fundamental ideas. Look, these things didn't even exist. Certainly they didn't exist when I was going to college. And now they're placed as the highest values of the institution, and the entire institution is in service to these values. And the problem is that there's no opportunity to question if those values should be the values that should guide the institution, because asking that question itself, they have a whole infrastructure, linguistic infrastructure. It's a microaggression. You've harmed people. You've done a form of violence against people. I mean, it's really, the whole thing is, it's really rather extraordinary.
See, what he's saying there is we need to foster an environment that allows students to critically think, because if not, then we get these ideologues and these people that'll come in and they'll start brainwashing and pushing an agenda and trying to indoctrinate students, which is what's happening. What is it's happening on a massive scale. You have few teachers now that are actually teaching students to critically think, but on a whole, on a mass, there is a wide range of teachers that are trying to indoctrinate your students, your kids. And this is happening not just at the college level, but at high school and even younger than that. You're seeing teachers trying to push this agenda, teaching kids about sexuality and that they can change their gender instead of teaching them math and English and history. Now you also have them trying to say that math is racist and that history, you got to change history because you don't like what it says because of what happened back then. That's part of the history. You're not supposed to change history. You're supposed to look at the history and the bad stuff. You're not supposed to repeat. You're supposed to learn from it. You're not supposed to change it because you don't like what it says. That's what happened. So now some of you might be thinking, okay, all right, I'm with you. I'm with you, Alex. I'm with you. I follow you. But what do we do? How do we fix it? And I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you asked. Because that is the question. How do we fix it? So they discuss this, Peter and Marissa. They discuss this question, and Peter gives his thoughts on what needs to be done. So let's look at this, and I want to see who of you actually agree with him. So let's check this out.
It's a bad way to think about the problem. But if someone wants to spend their time like that, that's fine with me.
I mean, I guess in so many ways, you could have stayed there and said, let me try to save it. But
No.
you realize there's no saving to be
No,
done.
I want the whole system to be burned to the ground. Why would we want an institution that trains people and indoctrinates people into false views of reality? They'd be much better if they went to vocational school and took a trade. Or if actually they'd be much better if they just laid in the field and looked at the sky. I mean, why would we want to encourage going to an institution that teaches you false things?
Yeah, and the problem is that our universities are not fans of reality.
Correct.
And
So how many of you guys actually agree with his solution that the education system needs to be burned to the ground? Because quite honestly, I do. I really feel like it does need to be burned to the ground. There's no saving it. It's so polluted. There's no amount of saving it. Especially teachers, like you mentioned in the previous clip, that have jobs for life, meaning tenure. When a teacher has tenure, it's practically impossible to get them fired unless they commit some sort of heinous crime. It's basically, they have a job for life. So it's really tough to get rid of these teachers that are indoctrinating students. And so we are going to have this nasty cycle of people that are in there. We just need to demolish the whole thing and restructure and rebuild it and put better policies and rules in place to prevent it from happening again. Now I know some of you are skeptical, watching this saying, surely the education system's not that bad. That's just one example. Portland, Oregon. Okay, like it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Well, I have a clip to show you from Alexis Wilkins. She did an interview with PragerU. She's a country singer, and she was talking about this whole experience that she had at the university that she was going to, and how her teacher practically gave her an F. And let me just play for you this clip so that you can hear it from her, and let's be shocked. Let's be shocked together. So check this out.
I was already working full-time in country music when I was applying to college. I went to Belmont University and I was in a comparative politics class. The professor started class out every day with 15 minutes of German punk and wouldn't really touch on the reading that we were supposed to do, but it would end up a class discussion about kind of what was going on. Of course, this was in the height of the 2016 election, so people were very passionate, as was I, which I think showed the professor that I wasn't being indoctrinated at the rate at which he wanted to indoctrinate students. And I love school. I have always done my work. I have never gotten a B. I am a huge school fan. It's just always been something about me. But At the end of the semester, I checked my grade and I received an F with no explanation. I was looking at degree works and kind of where you input your work and see what got graded. And ultimately, he just didn't put the work that I turned into my degree works at all. So I go to the dean of the political science department, who had me in a class previously, knows I do good work. And so through several meetings with him, creating a binder of my work and my creation dates from my computer to show that I did do the work on time and turn it in, we did ultimately get the grade turned into a passing grade. And the president of the school didn't seem surprised at this behavior. He kind of went, yeah, when you told me which professor it was, I fully anticipated that. And so the fact that the president was aware of this, but couldn't do anything about it because of the way that colleges work and tenured professors and blowback from it, was fascinating to me. It's unsettling, I think, conditioning-wise, to have this goal that you set out for yourself to graduate from college, to get a degree, and everything you're doing along the way is compromising you and your principles. It promotes division, it promotes victimhood, and it doesn't promote a successful and hardworking upcoming generation.
This is Belmont University. Belmont University. So that's 2, because we have Peter, who is a teacher, who left Portland University, and we have Belmont. That's already 2. Now, you're like, yeah, but 2? The entire education system? Oh, there's more. I mean, I can include clip after clip after clip, but we'd be here all day. You know, this is for you to really research how many universities are teaching this woke garbage and trying to indoctrinate kids. So, what happens when you indoctrinate people? You get students that come out that are regurgitating what they're being told and taught, but they can't critically think. So when you push back, when you have somebody that can critically think and ask them a simple question as in defining what you mean, it falls apart. They fall apart. They can't hold up their argument. They can't even define what they're talking about. This clip I have is from the Whatever podcast. And this lady, she was reading the comment that came in for her, kind of directed to her, so they asked her to read the comment out loud. And after she read the comment, she said the word misogynist. And the guy was like, well, what do you define as, what's misogyny? And she could not answer it. So let's look at this clip together and really wonder, is this happening on a massive scale? So let's check this out.
And Murphy, do you want to read this one, Rachel? I think it's directed to you.
Yeah.
No, like out loud.
Oh. Here we go. First girl, serious advice. You need to stop making decisions and choices. Find a man in your family who is sensible and who really cares about you. And just take their advice seriously. Also, abandon feminism. It's truly poison. Okay, you guys are all just like really misogynistic. I don't necessarily need a man to tell me. I also have females who can support me. I feel like women and men can both provide that.
Wait,
So
what is misogynistic about his statement here?
Well, I don't know why it has to be a man. Why does it have to be a man? I think the problem
why is that?
Well, I would
I'm
say
not sure
most
why
of
that's
my-
misogynistic, but
no, not that. I mean, like, never
what's
mind.
how do you define misogyny?
There's a lot of answers up there, Brian.
Yeah. Mhm.
No, how do you define misogyny?
I don't know. I don't like this.
What? I'm just asking how you define misogyny.
Can I go?
are you okay? Like, do you want to go as in leave? Is it because I asked how you define misogyny? Is that the?
No.
I wanted to make sure that we were like talking about, because in a debate, it's very important that both people are talking about the same thing, and both people have things defined.
Well, I'm not going to answer how I'm using this in the context because I have signed a waiver.
Wait, what?
Never mind. I don't.
Do you want to just take a little breather? Or you could just stay at the table. I mean...
No, I'd like to go home, if that's allowed.
Because I asked about how you define misogyny. That was the precipitating thing.
Now, some of you might be thinking to yourselves, that was pretty bad. That was pretty bad. She couldn't even define the word, and then she just kind of broke down and wanted to leave. And this is what's happening, is these universities are pushing these students out. These indoctrinated, brainwashed students. So they're screaming all of these words and regurgitating all of these words, misogynistic, racist, transphobic, all of this. And then when they encounter somebody that can critically think for themselves and pushes back on them and doesn't even really say anything crazy, they're just like, okay, before we even start this discussion, let's first define what we're talking about so that we can at least be on the same page. And they can't even hold it up. They can't define the words that they're crying and that they're screaming and claiming that somebody is. And then they can't even hold up an argument. So we kind of see this in this next clip. This teacher was asked by one of the students his thoughts on J.K. Rowling, because this was around the time that now they were allowing men to compete in women's sports, and J.K. Rowling came out and she was kind of speaking out against this, and she was labeled transphobic and all of this stuff, and smeared in the media, and people were believing it. And so you hear the way the student kind of asks the question, like he believes this narrative as well, and how the teacher takes him from that point and really like critically thinks and analyzes it and where he ends up. It's quite amazing. So let's check out this clip, and we'll come back and give some final thoughts on it. So let's look at this.
So these guys want to talk about J.K. Rowling? Is that so? What's going on with that? What do you want to know?
She's had a pretty controversial past. I just want to know, like, what are your thoughts on it? And, like, do you still like her work despite her bigoted opinions?
So let's get specific, though. Let's define bigoted opinions. What opinions are bigoted? We're going to treat this as a thought experiment. I'm not going to say what's right or wrong or what way to think. The whole point is to learn how to think, not what to think.
Yeah.
So when you say bigot, you're starting with the conclusion that given her bigoted opinions.
Yeah.
So first let's start with, does she have bigoted opinions? So when you say bigoted opinions.
She has had a history of being extremely transphobic, I've heard.
Hey, you've heard. So what, can you give me an example?
If you look at her Twitter, I think you could see a few things. If you want, I could try and find
see
something.
See if you can find one.
So, one of these tweets that she came up with in 2019, she said, "Dress however you please, call yourself whatever you like, sleep with any consenting adult who will have you live your best life in peace and security, but force women out of their jobs for stating that sex is real."
So you find that bigoted? What do you find about
it? Was deemed transphobic. I myself.
Do you find that transphobic yourself?
I don't really have an opinion on it, but I'm just going with what a lot of other people have said.
So let's pause it. Let's not go with what other people are saying. Let's try and learn how to critically think. So let's analyze the tweet ourselves. So that statement, do you see anything problematic? Disregarding other people's opinions.
She did try and pin some things on a specific group of people.
Where does she do that? Can you read that?
But force women out of their jobs for stating that sex is real.
So when I hear that, I'm interpreting that as meaning if a woman says that, saying that there's a difference between men and female and then being attacked as transphobic, I think that's what she's saying by attacking someone for stating that sex is real.
That is exactly what she's saying.
Is that transphobic to you?
So, to me, no. Stating that sex is real is not transphobic. It's just a fact of life. It exists.
So is there anything you disagree with in that tweet?
In that tweet, I can't really see anything that I myself disagree with, but I can see why some people would think, oh, this is offensive. We can't have that here or something, because...
Sure.
There's an apology tweet.
Let's read that. What did she say there? I haven't read that.
I respect every trans person's right to live any way that feels authentic and comfortable to them. I'd march with you if you were discriminated against on the basis of being trans. At the same time, my life has been shaped by being female. I do not believe it is hateful to say so.
You see anything problematic there?
She's apologizing, so no, not really. If I could read it again.
It sounds like a very similar statement as what she was just saying. She's basically saying, like, I have nothing, to me, this is what I interpret it as, I have nothing against someone being trans.
Exactly.
It's your life, but you just don't get to impose on you can live how you want, I can live how I want.
Yeah.
And let's all,
Exactly.
So I guess now that we're looking at it like, oh, there's not much difference between me or her, do you think it's fair that that she's being attacked by a large group of people and people are calling her, like you said at the beginning of this conversation, you said, given the fact that J.K. Rowling is transphobic, how do you feel about Harry Potter? Now, retroactively looking at that statement, do you think that was the best way to phrase?
No, I feel like an idiot now.
It's okay though, but this is why we do this, to learn how to think.
There's been
We all need to be able to critically think. If you see in that last clip how he took that student from his premise initially all the way to here and where he ended up. And this is what we need to do. We all need to be able to critically think. We can't just listen to what is said in the media or what is said in classrooms by teachers and take it as law, as fact, because it's coming from a teacher. Don't be afraid to challenge the teacher, have opposing viewpoints, and have a discussion, have a debate. Let's talk about these ideas. Hash them out. We can't suppress them and silence them. That's not the way this works. If we don't critically think, then we become sheep that's able to be brainwashed and indoctrinated. And we can't be brainwashed and indoctrinated. It's crucial and vital for our country and as a society and as a race, quite frankly, a human race, to be able to critically think for yourself. Make your own decisions apart from somebody else. Apart from somebody else. I mean, I remember growing up that, my parents, they would go and they'd vote. And so I ended up voting the same way that they voted when I became old enough to vote. I was voting the same way. I didn't really get into politics and really start following what was going on, quite frankly, until 2016. And when that happened, and I really started following and looking into everything, I realized, okay, I still kind of vote the same way. I still lean that way. So that's fine. But a lot of us that are raised, say, voting a different way, and then we critically think and look at the history of everything, and we're like, what? And it comes as a complete shock, because all our life we've been just doing it because that's what's always been done. That's what's always been done. No, we have to critically think. We have to critically think. So I thank you guys so much for tuning in this week and watching this. I hope you learned something, and I hope this is kind of refreshing, that you're hearing another side to this, and hopefully you're able to stand up as well in the classroom, just with other people that have those opposing viewpoints, that you're able to actually stand up and challenge them, ask them to support their opinion, support their viewpoint, and see how well they can defend it. So thank you guys again for watching. Please comment below, let me know your thoughts, and stay tuned for next week's episode, because we got a good one. So thanks, and until then, stay safe.